Welcome to Exit Paradox, where we explore what actually happens after a successful business exit. I'm your host, Anastasia Koroleva. My guest today is Adam Rossi. He sold his company Platinum Solutions 14 years ago and walked away with life-changing wealth. But what hit him first after his exit was regret. We talk about how he came to terms with his new reality, searched for his new purpose, and dealt with losing his found identity. My favorite part of Adam's story is that he built his company with his wife, Leila. And their marriage didn't just survive building and selling the business, it actually got stronger through it. We talk about what Adam would do differently now that he's had 14 years to reflect. Adam's story is fascinating and full of hard-won wisdom. I'm so grateful he shared it. Why do you think exited founders tend to make really bad investors? What's wrong with us?
Yeah, I think we're terrible investors by and large because we have a bunch of money, a bunch of liquidity all of a sudden, and we have not had the experience of investing in things outside of our core industry. We have been stewards of capital where we're saying, okay, I'll invest in a new piece of equipment or a new office, but it's not really doing diligence on different things. And so we become like the biggest suckers on the planet, right? We are targets for scammers. Mm-hmm. We are targets for people who prey on our good-natured desire to want to help other founders. We are optimists by and large, and so we tend not to look for the negatives in a potential investment. This sounds great. I think we could do this. I think we're kind of like, I was talking to a friend who, within my circle of entrepreneurs, friends who have exited, a number of them have been scammed on more than one occasion for millions of dollars, right? They got into an investment they didn't really understand with people that were not either qualified or had bad intentions, and they lost millions of dollars. Yeah. And I was talking to my friend, and I was like, why? I know those people are smart people. I mean, geniuses, and they are experienced, and they founded companies that you would have heard of. You've seen them on TV. How are they victims of fraud like that? And my friend said, we suck at investing. Like we suck at investing. We do. Like if you think, it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something, even if we've owned our business for a decade or 2 decades, how much investing experience did we have during that time? Not a lot, usually. Some of us have acquired a company with, but not the level of scrutiny and diligence, and really, we haven't even really, I think, exercised the ability to say no enough yet, which is definitely something that you have to learn, right? My default answer is no.
Yeah. No, the ability to say no, the skill of saying no is something that takes people a while to acquire. I also found that when these requests, financial requests, come from family or friends, it's especially hard, and then we are really not prepared. And that's a big danger. But I also found that some of the personal traits, character traits that made us successful as entrepreneurs are exactly the ones that make us so horrible as investors. Like, for example, risk tolerance, the desire to do things. Like if you look at the Warren Buffetts of this world, they win because they don't do much, right? And it's very hard for us. We can't just sit and wait. It's completely unnatural. And then, of course, there are other problems like the sudden wealth syndrome, which is a psychological problem when we become extremely scared of losing the money we got. But as a result, we make very impulsive decisions because we jump on opportunities that are too risky to earn a lot of money because we're actually scared to lose, and we end up losing. So I think it's extremely important for people who recently exited to fully appreciate that A, we're idiots when it comes to
Hmm.
investors, and B, our personality may not really suit that type of activity in the first place. But I'm very interested because you did a lot of angel investing. You stopped doing it, but you still consider yourself an investor. You just do it differently. It's more like private equity investment that you're doing now rather than angel investing. How did you transition in terms of your mindset, your thinking, but also your skills to feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's by and large now as a limited partner, right? So, we're acquiring companies through like a private equity fund. We are giving them growth capital. We're then acquiring, another company in the same industry, putting them together, growing them. Eventually, we'll exit the company. So as a limited partner, I'm I can choose to be very involved. I can choose to be a little bit involved. It's really shifting from finding great founders or opportunities to just finding qualified general partners that are executing a plan that is predictable and that you have confidence in. And
Yeah.
so, it's and that's why I mentioned, I think even with angel investing, which is not traditionally like a PE thing, and if it's early enough, not even a traditional VC thing, but I also think even those are better done through a fund with staff. And, I like having the ability to do, what they call sidecar investments, where I've been
Mhm.
following the company, the fund is invested in them. They come back and they say, okay, we have, an opportunity to invest more in company X. And then I'll say, yes, I've been following this company closely. I want to increase my investment. Um, I'll do it through the sidecar. So yeah, that's, apart from the operating companies, like Total Shield, I mentioned that I acquired, I'll always be on the lookout for other companies I can buy and put together with them. But I've found that qualified general partners earn their fee for a reason, right? They deserve it. They're doing a lot of the a ton of diligence work. They're looking at a deal flow that I do not have the patience or time to look at. And then it's just traditional equity investing, right? I mean, just, buy and hold dumb ETFs and hang out in them, and, and collect dividends and do well with those too. Right. And so, um, yeah, I think, I think it's doing that stuff and saying no to weird deals you don't understand, products you can't understand easily, or things that are very illiquid and will tie you up for
Mhm.
a long period of time. Right? Those are, I my banker is J.P. Morgan. Um, they're similar, Goldman Sachs. They're all kind of similar in that they will try to put you into weird products sometimes, and I've trained them to say, like, I'm not interested. If it's too hard for me to
Yeah.
understand in 10
Yeah.
seconds, I'd rather just hang out in, you know, an index fund. Like, it's fine.
So, Adam, I love that we are going into this subject because just last month I spoke at a conference of post exit founders where I shared with them the fact that so often we start our sequels full of confidence after our success, and yet the statistics is that 70% of sequels fail. And I've collected about 30 reasons by now of why it happens, and I divide them into three groups, and one of them has to do with the timing. We start a new company too early when we are not yet emotionally ready and the quality of our judgment is very poor, or we start them too late when we are already too used to comfortable lifestyle not working, basically early retirement. And the second group is about motivation. Our motivation needs to be right, because I found that it doesn't actually matter why we start our first company, but it really matters why we start our sequel, because we cannot start it out of fear and greed anymore. We'll just run out of that motivation very quickly. And then the last reason is that so many of us haven't really processed our experience and never identified our true zone of genius. So we jump bravely into a new industry, into a new market where we know nothing, and then we get burnt. So I'd love to use this framework of these three reasons to analyze your experience and to see if you can relate to any of these problems.
Well, I can definitely relate to the problem of jumping into a industry that you don't understand. For me, after we sold the software company, as a software developer, I was always working on kind of a virtual product. And I said, I want to make a physical product. I want to manufacture something. I want to own a manufacturing company. And so very quickly, I bought a manufacturing company that designed and manufactured its own commercial HVAC equipment. And it was really, I think my downfall was two things: speed. I wanted to do something quickly, and I didn't identify and diligence a major problem with the acquisition, which we can get into, but
Mhm.
had to do with a related party transaction. It was very obvious. It turned out to be the downfall of the company. I missed it. I just wanted to do the deal. But the
Mhm.
main problem, I think the overarching one, was hubris. I distinctly remember, um, after being on the Inc. 500 list year after year and climbing the list, and we're number 60, then we're number 50. You're doubling every year. You get this feeling of invulnerability, infallibility when it comes to business. And I kind of felt like business is business. I don't care what the domain is. Like I can perform anywhere. And
Yeah.
and so I really, really got burned on that first acquisition, because there was a lot of things I didn't understand, and it was a very different environment, and it turned out to be a really poor acquisition that I divested at a significant loss.
Mhm. So tell me why it is that you chose to acquire companies as opposed to starting from scratch.
So the the main problem I think we had with our software company was we were cash poor, and we took a long time to kind of get to viability.
Mhm.
You know, we had no ability to borrow money. We didn't have any money of our own, and so Lila kept working at Anderson Consulting. She would pay our mortgage and our gas bill and all the bills. I was sitting at the kitchen table working, and it took a solid you know 2 or 3 years before you could say this is a going concern. We were always kind
Mhm.
of one invoice away from this is not working. Like if a customer was slow to pay. And so looking back on those 3 years of toil, um, I really wanted to skip that, right? And so you get into a different position where a you're a little less patient. B, you have more
Mhm.
money, or you have the ability to write a check. And for me, skipping the viability stage was really worth um, the investment. And
Yeah.
so, it has proven effective in kind of subsequent acquisitions that I've done. And
Mhm.
it's something that at least you get to skip the, does the market care about this? Are there
Yeah.
customers for
Of
this?
course.
Um, and and so yeah, I feel strongly that the right acquisition um, is just such a uh, jump start.
Yeah. No, I can absolutely see that. If you find a company that has already proven they have a product market fit, the
Yep,
risk is significantly lower. So it's the time and the risk for you,
time
the
and
effort it
risk.
takes as also.
Yeah, and just that trade of I will trade money for time.
Yeah,
You know, because it's often a really good trade.
absolutely. So, Adam, the most important question. You said that you regretted exiting your business at some point soon after the exit because you were missing that sense of purpose, that mission that you had in your business. Do you have it now? Have you found it?
Yeah, I absolutely. One of the things that I think is interesting about the human mind is we tend to forget um, uh, some of the bad things and we remember good things
Mhm.
nostalgically.
Mhm.
Um, I have now come to the point in my life where I realize there was great highs, but also terrible lows, and a lot of physical sacrifice and mental sacrifice, and just being bathed in stress all the time that I'm glad to not be a part of, and I know I do not want to step back into. And
Mhm.
um, so I feel now, uh, you know, if the opportunity came back and they said, "Hey, do you want your old company back?" I would say, um, I'm not going to take it back. I
Mhm.
can't, at this point,
Yeah.
have the same quality of life that I have today with taking that on again. Um, and I think it's one of those things where a lot of founders that I've talked to have that kind of feeling of I've made a mistake. But generally, when you talk to them after, you know, a given number of years,
Mhm.
they get over that feeling, right? They say, "Oh yeah, I made the right decision, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad I did it when I was young
Yeah.
enough to appreciate all these things I've appreciated in life."
Mhm.
Um, and I'm in that spot too.
Yeah. So again, do you, however, find a sense of purpose in that life? Because all you said is so correct. It's exactly what I found as well, what I've observed in others and in myself. But I also found that when you talk to those people who are very happy with their lifestyle a few years after the exit, or 10 years or more after the exit, they may have this problem with the sense of purpose, because purpose does come from sacrifice, from accepting a duty for something. And when we settle into this beautiful lifestyle and we have the sense of contentment, we're stress free, it is hard to sacrifice, much harder than it was earlier on in our lives. How to reconcile that?
I'm at this point. I'm 51 years old, and I still feel like I have a lot to do and accomplish, and I'm not sure what those things are yet. And so I think there are. I guess what I would say is there are things that I have in my mind that I haven't done yet that I want to accomplish and do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of them are mundane and others are very ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just don't feel uh, like there's a clock running where I need to do
Mm-hmm.
something on a schedule anymore. And so I used to be very regimented about goals and, this is my goals for the next year. I'm going to accomplish these things. I'm going to, you know, my goals now are really, first centered around family. And I think there will be a big decision to make when my 14-year-old, you know, goes to college or leaves the house, right? I mean, I think that's the next stage, this empty nester stage, which I've got friends that are going through now,
Yeah.
where I'll need to say, what is my next? Do I want to take one of these kind of lofty goals and
Mm-hmm.
try to go towards it? So it's maybe 3 or 4 years away, but
Yeah.
uh, you know, I think there's always things that can make us feel fulfilled and things that we want to do and ambitions that we have, and I think it's just finding the right time and place to do them.
Yeah, I think balance is the hardest thing to achieve in life, because balance is so easily disbalanced, right? And entrepreneurs tend to be people who are very obsessive by nature, and balance is
Hmm.
particularly hard for us. And yet we crave it all the time, because
Yep.
that sense of fulfillment usually comes from us feeling, oh, we have, the sense of achievement, but we have a sense of purpose, and then we are content all at the same time. And it's very difficult. And I think it's very, very rare that people find that. um, situation. But I want to stay on the topic of mission and purpose simply because you raised it as such an important thing for you early on. How would you define that sense of mission and purpose you may one day want to have again in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, we want to have an impact on people's lives somehow, right? We want to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
We want to, you know, have something that people will look back and say they made it better in this way, right? And so, I feel like it's hard to get into something you're not really excited about, even if it makes you a ton of money, that you don't find is doing those things, right? That it's either it's making an impact on health or safety or something meaningful. And so I think what happens is a lot of us say, okay, well, I'm in an industry. I mean, just pick like something mundane, like I run a call center, right? It's not really what I'm passionate about, but it's going to make me a bunch of money, and then I'll get into philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I've found is difficult. Philanthropy for entrepreneurs is another area where we tend to not do a great job of it. We might be on a board of a philanthropy, but it's operating in a way that's counter to the way we've operated, which is focusing on doing something in kind of a capitalist economy that people want to pay for, and we get market signals and we get rewarded. So I've been very, I think what a lot of people would say when you ask that question is, oh, well, I find meaning now by being philanthropic. For me, it's been difficult because when I've been involved in those, I haven't achieved a lot of fulfillment from them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more, what I do every day. Almost every day I have a call with someone who has an idea for a company or has founded a company and just wants it. They're not looking for investment. They're looking for help or advice. I'd much rather help people in that way, create kind of a better company that employs people and helps the economy than giving money to philanthropies by just writing checks. So I feel like my answer to the question of like what can provide fulfillment in the future is really just helping build people up that are on kind of an entrepreneurial path. And for me, not so much on the philanthropic side. We certainly give money to philanthropies, but I think that's the typical entrepreneur's path of like, now I'm going to be Mr. or Miss Philanthropy and be on a bunch of boards and give a bunch of money. And I haven't been very successful at that.
Yeah. I also think that sometimes it happens early on, but it's vanity driven. And as we grow through this post-exit challenging period, many of us develop like aversion to anything vanity driven. We want things to be real, and we stop doing that. We stop doing it in a way for your own reasons. I have met amazing entrepreneurs who found this mission driven activity in venture philanthropy when they merge business and philanthropy together. That seemed to work for some people, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great model if you can figure it out. I think it's tricky to figure out, but I think if you can do it where you're helping a community or a founder with a business that is providing a service to its community, or like that's the dream, right? Is if you can kind of use your skills to help build up a family or a community in an entrepreneurial sense. I haven't cracked the code of how to do it, but I know that some people have been successful doing that.
So Adam, you keep saying that for you, potentially the way to find your purpose would be in helping other entrepreneurs. But this is what you're doing right now, isn't it? Like, what I want to really understand is why you think, just based on your personal journey, why you think you had a sense of purpose when you were running your first business, Platinum Solutions, and you don't quite have it now when you're less involved in Total Shield, which you bought, and there are other people who run it.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think the problem that I have is when you have a mission that you feel is like literally life or death, what do you do that is more meaningful?
Mhm.
You know, like if I had a company that was like a trash disposal company, like, okay, I help sanitation, that's a public good, but like I can top that. Like I can do better, right? Like it's hard to um, replace a like for like kind of mission,
Mhm.
at least perceived level of impact and
Yeah.
importance from where I was. And so
Mhm.
I think, um, I'm pretty confident that there will come a time in my life where I say, this is the next mission.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel just as strongly about this mission as I did for that previous mission.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be patient and see what that is and not try to force it because I've forced things a couple different times over the past decade and they don't seem to go
Yeah.
well when I force it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I hear you. So you basically gave me two reasons why you are not pursuing these big, ambitious things that you at some point want to pursue. The first one, you actually want all your kids out of the house. So a very personal reason. And the second one is that you want it to come to you naturally. You don't want to force it. So why do you think the children prevent you from going in that direction?
I think it's just a question of time and balance that, you
Hmm.
know, if you mentioned having a lot of founders who feel kind of regret that they spent so much of their effort while their kids were in their formative years in their business, and then after they exited, maybe they were going through a lot of discovery and maybe just not as present as they could have been, even though they had all this time to spend with their kids. I I am cautious about that feeling of regret. That
Yeah.
if I were to say I found my next mission, I mean, for example, and I don't want to say this in kind of a bragging way, but a lot of people have said you should run for public office.
Hmm.
And I say, on the one hand, I I think that's attractive. On the other hand, I see the level of scrutiny it does to kids in school, the attention,
Hmm.
often negative that they receive, and I'd much rather have them, you know, out of high school and
Hmm.
than to do that with high school kids. Now, you know, it's just one example of something that
Hmm.
I've considered where I've said, is it better to do it today or to wait just a couple more years and not put kids through that, or the time commitment and saying, now I suddenly can't, go to your basketball game. I
Hmm.
can't, help you with your homework because I'm getting dragged back into something. And reason I sold, one of the reasons I sold the company was, you know, to spend more time with the kids. So anyways,
Yeah.
that's
That
why I
that's
think I don't know that you can't do it, but I'm just being careful.
Yeah. No, it's that balance that is so hard to achieve, isn't it? Balancing the kids and personal ambitions and all of that. So, Adam, you have been angel investing for a while. Could you share your experience?
Yeah, I really wanted to do angel investing because I really like to work with new founders and I like to, kind of coach and mentor them. And so I've been involved in angel investing for over a decade. And I started doing it a lot. Um, there's this concept of, the power law, and you need to invest in a lot of startups because most fail, and you'll have one or two winners, and one or two will be okay. And so I kind of took that to heart, and I started investing in a lot of startups. And
Hmm.
um, over time, my love of startup investing has dwindled, and I'm now at the point where I'm only really participating in a handful of startups that I have been with for quite some time,
Hmm.
and have really kind of closed the door on new angel investing.
So what I find a lot among exited founders, and I experienced it myself, is that we have this illusion that angel investing will satisfy some of that need or desire to be entrepreneurial again, to have our own company. And then we realize that angel investing doesn't give us a creative outlet because we don't control the company, so we cannot actually um, bring any dream into reality without that control. It's very similar how artists, for example, would not be able to create a piece of art if they don't have a complete and full control over their artwork. Does this resonate with you?
It does. So you know, one example of one of the companies that I am still involved with is Lawn Starter. I met two young guys in their last semester of college at Virginia Tech who wanted to create this on-demand lawn care company. Using kind of a software app, and you click a button and somebody comes and mows your
Mhm.
lawn. And for 4 or 5 years, I was kind of saying, guys, you need to do these things. And they were like, yeah, okay, we're going to do it our way. And one of the big ones was, kind of implement a system like EOS, get a coach, and they were kind of resistant, which I get. Like, people are
Mhm.
headstrong, but um, eventually they did all those things, and they were like, yeah, I wish we'd done it earlier. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, as the angel investor, you can suggest, you can,
Yeah.
um, make your voice heard. But, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like, yeah, you're not telling them what to do. And a lot of the founders that you want to invest in are headstrong and individuals, and they want to do it
Mhm.
their way, which, I would have been the same way. And so, yeah, you
Exactly.
feel that friction of kind of like, I see, you know, you're going in a direction and I would not have done it that way, but I can't really change the outcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for example, if someone exited a few months ago and they ask you for an advice about angel investing, what would you say?
I will say, if you're doing this for a large monetary return, you're going to be probably disappointed.
Hmm.
If I took all the money that I've invested as an angel investor and just stuck it in an S&P 500 index fund, I would be farther ahead with the S&P 500 index fund. I mean, there's, no doubt about it. And I think the
Hmm.
statistics, um, the last time I looked at them, most angel investors don't make any money.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of them lose money. And so I would say, if you're doing this to be satisfied with your financial returns, probably not the best investment. If you're doing this because you want to be involved with mentoring and kind of the startup scene, that
Hmm.
that's that's viable. But again, temper your expectations for how much you're going to um, be involved or have a
Hmm.
say, as we just discussed. And so I think for some people, um, it's enough to get a quarterly update and write a check, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
they like it. They have an intrinsic, I'm helping give back.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I can make an introduction or answer a question,
Hmm.
and for them that's okay. And so I'd say, if that's your expectation, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, it's one of those weird things where everyone will tell you, oh, you're just not doing it enough. You need to do it more. And I would say, so to you got to invest in at least 10 or 20 startups. Well, if to do that, you have to diligence 200 startups. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. I mean,
Yeah.
sitting through the pitches, reading the documents, looking at the legal agreements, significant amount of work. And so I think a lot of folks, when they look at that, they say, you know what, I'd probably be better off getting involved with a group that does this, so we share the
Mhm.
diligence, or investing in a fund, and then I can, jump in and out if I feel like I can lend value to one of the fund
Yeah.
portfolio companies. I think we all tend to gravitate towards that as the better option.
Yeah. I'm very happy that you mentioned that it's actually hard work and it takes a lot of time. That was my experience as well. And I did not expect that. And I think oftentimes people want to try angel investing either because lots of others around them do that, or because they're searching for a balance between lifestyle and work, and they don't want
Yep.
to work too hard because they're still exhausted from the marathon of the first business, which is very understandable. And I'm curious how you created a lifestyle balance for yourself. Did you have a good balance while building a business?
When my I did not have a good balance for most of my software company career, and um, it was, I was young. I mean, I started my company when I was 26. I needed less
Mm-hmm.
sleep than I do now as a 51-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But I would routinely work 20 hours a day. I would, 7 days a week, work every weekend, work a lot of holidays. Um, you know, just, my eyes would just be like bugging out looking at my
Mm-hmm.
screen, writing software or reviewing code, or whatever it was. And so, it caused a lot of, you know, physical stress, and I didn't have a great balance. And Lila and I had uh, we have 3 kids. We had our first child, um, uh, somewhat early in the business, where we were bringing kids to the office. I, there's so many pictures of, like, my son sitting at my desk with me as I'm working, and my wife would bring him in just so that, like, we'd have some, together time because I was working so hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that I caution, when we get back to kind of mentoring other founders. I
Mm-hmm.
say, look, I got away with it, but I have a lot of friends who really hurt themselves, physically, have lasting kind of stress problems,
Yeah.
mentally, have hurt their marriage by working so hard. So it's something I caution folks on.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's hard when you tell a young person, okay, I got here by working really, really hard. You should work hard, but set some limits. And they're kind of like, well, you didn't. It's like, yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah. But in your situation, Lila worked with you on the business, right?
She did.
And you and I talked about this before. How investors don't like those wife and husband uh, businesses. I personally think wrongly, even though it's understandable. So, would you mind sharing your experience running a business with your wife? How
Yeah.
strategic were
So,
you guys about it?
so we, I've heard that too, where people say, look, if you invest in a business with a husband and wife founder, if there's a problem with the relationship, the business often gets torn apart, right? I mean, there's just
Hmm.
no easy way to unwind that. I think that's the downside. The good side that we experienced is, when it works, it's an amazing, it's like the best partnership ever made, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
people, you typically see a lot of founders have a co-founder or two co-founders, right? So it'll be either 2 or 3 people that start a company. And I understand why they do that, because it's really scary to do something totally alone. You have no one really that's a
Mhm.
peer in the business to talk to. You can't really talk to your employees, So people naturally, I think, look for partners in a business. For me, the best partner in the world was my wife. I mean, just
Mhm.
someone who, you know, I have 100% trust in. She has 100% trust in me. We've had a
Mhm.
very long relationship that has stood the test of time, and someone who I knew would always make the right decision for the business, and she knew I would always do the right thing for the business. There was never that,
Hmm.
seed of doubt that I think partners have, where someone
Hmm.
says, "Well, I'm working harder, I want this more, or I deserve more." For us, it was just the perfect partnership, and I love the fact um, that we did it and it worked
Hmm.
extremely well. You know, I won't say that there wasn't moments of stress in our marriage, because there certainly
Yeah.
were, where we're both getting, terrible news about like an employee resigning, or, a customer leaving us, or, some type of, usually on like a vacation or on a week, right? Like the
Hmm.
worst possible time. And we're
Yeah.
both like,
Yeah.
usually like one partner is removed from it. Like we didn't have that, but the little downsides were far outweighed for me and Lila
Hmm.
by the amazing upsides. Like, who else
Yeah.
can you trust that well?
Yeah. So, okay, trust is one thing. Did you have complementary skills?
Yeah, we did. I mean, I was really good technically,
Hmm.
and I was really good at working with our customer base.
Hmm.
I was not great at organizing, managing, hiring, firing. There were a lot of things that um, held us back when Lila was working at Anderson and I was kind of the only, you
Hmm.
know, day to day employee, or manager, if you will.
Hmm.
So, I mentioned, we didn't grow for the first few years, mainly because I was a control freak. I had
Hmm.
employees that were afraid to do their own thing. They would always say, "Is this okay?" And I'd say, "No, it's not. Let me rewrite it." Um, and so when when we reached a point where it was like, okay, this is a viable company, Lila, come over and assume the role of kind of the CEO, the person that is
Hmm.
doing the running of this company, the hiring of the management team, all those things that were kind of internal to the company. And I just said, okay, I'm not writing code anymore. I need to be spending my time,
Hmm.
with our customers downtown in DC and in Maryland, wherever they are. Like I need to be kind of outside. So we had kind of an inside outside
Okay.
division of labor, if you will.
Clear,
Um,
clear division of labor then.
Clear division of
Yeah.
labor. I mean, don't get me wrong, like every key hire we were both talking about, but she would usually be the one that would interview them kind of extensively. And I would be the one that would, if there was like a technical question, like I might technically interview them,
Hmm.
but we would always, for big decisions, obviously it was a, a mutual decision, but clear divisions of labor where there were things where she would just say like, don't, you don't have you don't have to mess with this. Like I have
Yeah.
this. Don't screw it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said trust. We talked about complementary skills. How about conflict resolution? How did you resolve conflicts
Yeah, I
or
mean,
disagreements about the business? Because I'm sure there were some.
the thing is, we had so few disagreements that I know it sounds kind of hard to believe, but there were really never any big disagreements. I mean, if there were some things that we did that were um, maybe controversial or risky, like
Hmm.
I might have mentioned the putting a ton of money in a single competition with a large company,
Hmm.
Lockheed Martin. That was one where it was my decision to do it, and Lila was just like, "Look, if you feel this strongly about it, do it."
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
We just didn't really, or if she said, "Look, I really, really feel strongly about this CFO candidate. I know you were kind of lukewarm. I want to bring this person on." I would just say, "Let's do it." It was just the 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 times that I can't even really think of a time where we felt that differently about a topic that we had to have like a, rock, paper, scissors or anything. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it just didn't really happen like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I talked to another very successful exited founder recently, and I asked him how he protected his romantic relationships from his entrepreneurial grind. And he said, well, I merged them. He's another example of someone who built a business together with his wife very successfully, and in fact they created several businesses together. Which leads me to the question for you: if you had this successful experience doing it together, why didn't you do it again together?
Well, it's just I think the once we sold the business, we were 39 years old. Our kids were, uh, you know, kind of preteens, and um, Lila said, "Look, I've accomplished everything I want to accomplish in the business world.
Hmm.
I really, really want to focus on the
Hmm.
kids, and
Yeah,
I'm not in any hurry to step back into
yeah.
owning a business." And so, you know, at that point, and she's kept to that today. I mean, she does a lot of things, that are philanthropic, and is involved in, for example, boards at our college, Virginia Tech, extensively. She does a
Hmm.
lot of work on things, but it is no longer um, she for in terms of business ownership. She was kind of like, I'm good, and I was like, I still want to do some things,
Hmm.
and so we kind of you know
Yeah.
made those
No,
decisions
I
after that.
totally get it. So your kids are now 18, 17, and 14, right? You also have three kids like me.
Right.
So have you ever intentionally wanted them to be entrepreneurs as well?
I'm very cautious about telling them or even giving them the feeling that I have an expectation that they do one thing or another in their life, because I've
Hmm.
seen that happen in my family with my grandfather and owning construction businesses, and the expectation someone else is going to do this puts a lot of pressure on a kid. And I think kids need to have the freedom to figure out what they want to do in life to be happy. And so I have always my philosophy is expose the kids to everything. Bring them to the office, bring them to business meetings, bring them on entrepreneurial retreats. We're going to go on one this weekend. Expose them to all this stuff, but never, um, and always tell them you are free to pursue whatever you want. If you want to um, uh, try something,
Hmm.
in terms of entrepreneurship or founding a business, we'll be supportive of that. But if you want to be a, farmer or rodeo rider, whatever, like
Yeah.
just we'll support it.
Yeah. So, how did your family go about raising kids with wealth? That's obviously a very hot issue in the post exit community and a challenging one.
It is. I mean, I was very, very nervous when we sold the company about how that would affect our kids, because both
Hmm.
Lila and I grew up without um, money, and without, with a very strong kind of grit. And, it's something that we wanted our kids to have as well. And so we thought a lot about, how we communicated that with our kids, and how we structured it from a, um, will and trust perspective.
Hmm.
And what we hit upon was, we will take some money from the sale of the company, put it into an LLC that they are three-way owners of,
Hmm.
and they can use that business to, uh, once they're adults, borrow from to start a business or buy property, but they need to um, work together on it. And we're kind of legally advisors to the LLC until they're at an older age.
Hmm.
And they've not been told, they don't know what our net worth is,
Hmm.
and they're not really even that interested in knowing, which I like.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes they're quite worried, uh, like when my wife bought a newer car, they're kind of like, do we have the money to do that? Or are we going to, like, they're, in a way, they're kind of, it's charming in that they're not walking around thinking they're like wealthy
Hmm.
kids. And I always try to say, for one, we we constantly have them, uh, listen to their grandparents or us about, kind of growing up without money. And then I always remind them, like, okay, your mom just bought a new car. That's not your car. It's our car. And we worked really, really, really hard for that car.
Hmm.
Um, if they're, have a free day, I'll bring them to the warehouse and I'll put them to work. And, they work hard. And it's something that my father did with me. I mean, he'd bring me onto the construction sites and I'd pick up trash. I'd crawl through, uh, culverts under streets to figure out where, dirt was coming out, and they'd have a rope attached to me. And, I mean, I would do kind of all the dirty work that, kids, of, business owners do. And,
Yeah.
and I do that with my kids as well.
Hmm. Hmm. So your parents did that to you. So with you,
My dad definitely
you
did
do it
that
to
with
your
me.
kids. um, Adam, do you believe in passive investing? Do you think it's possible to invest passively and not spend too much time managing money post exit?
I think, if you so what happened to me is what happens to a lot of folks. They get approached by, the big banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and they say, we can manage everything for you, and we're going to put your money in these exotic kind of funds or structured notes or
Hmm.
proprietary products. And you're, as the founder of a company, you have some financial expertise, but this stuff that they're showing you is like different and weird, and
Yeah.
it's hard to understand. One of the things I think that happens is some founders go like one of two ways. Either they say, I'm going to manage everything, or I'm just going to let you manage it. And when you say, I'm just going to let you manage it to a financial advisor or one of these, banks, they tend to put you into a lot of things that are sticky and fee centric, and you're going to do okay. You're going to pay them a lot of
Hmm.
fees, and you can kind of ignore it.
Hmm.
There other folks say, I'm going to learn everything. I'm going to only invest in stuff I understand. If they were to invest their money in, S&P 500 index funds and, NASDAQ QQQ and, MSCI All World and just hang
Hmm.
out, like they're going to do great, right? I mean, they're just going to, that is truly passive investing.
Yeah.
If they're thinking that they can, you know, okay, I'm going to buy a bunch of real estate and that's passive. It isn't, right? I mean, you're dealing with the broken hot water heater, the tenant that's a deadbeat, a lot of
Hmm.
these investments that are kind of sold as passive are
Yeah.
like there's kind of no free lunch, and you're going to put some work in, and there's effort in almost everything. I mean, I think if you're truly wanting the life of the, I'm going to travel the world and drink wine and
Hmm.
surf and not worry about it. Like, you could put in a couple index funds, and pretty much that's the only passive
Hmm.
way that I'm aware of. And even
Yeah.
then, you're going to have to stomach some pretty scary drawdowns sometimes. A 30-40% drawdown, you're going to have to,
Yeah.
take that and live with it.
So, Adam, if you were to crystallize a few rules f- for yourself, how you balance your life and how you would like others to do it, what they can learn from you, what those points would be, those rules.
Well, I I tell people all the time that I think there's a big focus on wealth. People say, I want to be wealthy. I want to have millions of dollars. And I always say, what is it though that you would do if you had that money? And they
Hmm.
say, well, I would, spend more time coaching my kids' teams, or I would buy a
Hmm.
farm, or I would do, and I think a lot of those things are, we tend to, you would then say, well, okay, to do those things, how much money would you actually need? And it's usually a lot less than the millions and millions of dollars that people think they need.
Hmm.
And what I say is, okay, you really didn't want $50 million, 100 million. What you really wanted was freedom, right? You really wanted freedom of time, freedom of place. Um, and so I really tend to focus personally on freedom. I avoid being on a bunch of, you
Mm-hmm.
know, boards or companies that demand that I be attending things on a certain schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I like to work on my farm when the weather's nice, and when
Mm-hmm.
it's rainy, I like to work on something cool and technical. And,
Mm-hmm.
I may or may not be available for a Zoom call on any given day. And I
Yeah.
might be traveling with my wife to, you know, another country. She loves
Mm-hmm.
traveling and photography. And so I really, if I were to give people advice, I would say, don't focus on wealth,
Mm-hmm.
focus on freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on uh, living where you want to live, being with the people you want to be with, and doing the things you really want to do. And maybe not wait until you're, you know, 70 years old and you've reached this kind of artificial number to make those decisions, right? I mean, the other core tenet for my advice is focus very, very heavily on your health and enjoy your health while you have it. And
Yeah.
don't get caught in this trap that I've seen so many other successful entrepreneurs fall into, which
Mm-hmm.
is work and achieve success, but it's never enough, and never enjoy it, and then die. It
Yeah.
is shocking how often that happens to people. It's happened
Yeah.
to a good friend of mine recently.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I would say, yeah, I think that covers it. Focus on where you want to live, who you want to be with, and
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do, and don't um, don't lose sight of what you're really working towards.
Do you think it's possible to have a balance where you work hard on something that really excites you, some mission driven work, and at the same time have enough peace and freedom of time and time with the family? Is it possible?
I've seen people do it that were more effective than I was, and one of the things that I've seen other folks do is they'll say they create such very clear lines of what they will and won't do. And when there's always this natural um, thing that happens in a company where people will keep asking, for more and more like problem solving. Hey boss, what should we do here? And the most effective people I've seen are kind of like, what do you think we should do? And they'll say, I think we should do this. And they say, well, okay, then why don't you try that? And
Hmm.
they'll
Yeah.
remove themselves
Yeah.
from those positions where they're always kind of getting pulled in.
Hmm.
I was not good at that at first. I'm much better at it now with later companies. I think if you were to talk to my folks at Total Shield, they would say Adam's um, pretty good at delegating and doesn't really uh, fall into that
Hmm.
pattern that much. It took me
Hmm.
a long time to learn though. So I do think it can be done. I think it takes a real mindset and a diligence to protect that way of being, or you get busy, the company
Hmm.
grows, you fall into old habits, and it's easy to do.
Hmm. No, makes a lot of sense. Um, are there any other lessons that you feel um, we haven't shared that you would love to share with somebody who recently exited?
Well, um, I mean, for someone who's recently exited, you really need to protect your mental health, and
Hmm.
you need to be prepared um, for a bunch of side effects that you're not presently aware of if this is your first exit.
Hmm.
And I share, a lot of the things we've talked about just, total freedom of time when your friends are
Hmm.
working most days, the, the, um, the lost feeling you have where you're used to having 50 meetings in a day and now it's quiet. The guilt you'll feel if you just sit there at 2 p.m. And open up a book and start reading because you're kind of like, should I be doing this now or should I be working on,
Mhm.
something, right?
Mhm.
All these weird feelings that come up. And, I think it's important to just be aware that it's going to happen. It happens to
Mhm.
everybody. You'll feel depressed. You'll feel isolated. You will feel regret probably about exiting like I did.
Mhm.
And you have to either be prepared for, you know, um, kind of setting a new schedule and a new direction and new kind of goals and
Mhm.
things that excite you at the same time avoiding doing what I did and what we've talked about, which is making a quick decision to get into another business just because you don't know what to do. That
Yeah.
it's
And you
kind of
want to
like,
do something. You want to be
yeah, you
busy.
want to do
Right?
something, you want to be busy. It's like a fine line between like jumping into something and doing nothing and feeling
Yeah.
like you're lost. It's
Yeah.
it's a weird balancing act that I think I would tell people just be prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So, Adam, you are very consistent and disciplined in making very high quality, deep, and thoughtful social posts. I love reading them. I love watching
Oh,
your
thank you.
videos. Why are you doing it? What does it give you?
I really feel an obligation to help the next generation. Um, period. I mean, I feel like
Hmm.
we, uh, I feel like anyone who's achieved some success is obligated to try to share some of that formula with
Yeah.
younger people. And I always say that the world belongs to the young, not the old. And I've noticed a pattern with some folks who are older and have kind of made it to be, in a way, kind of selfish. And
Hmm.
I want to avoid that by trying to give
Hmm.
of my time to whoever needs it. So I do a lot of those posts just to kind of generate. It'll be something that's on my mind. I'll record a quick video or I'll write a post just to try to share my experience or thinking on something. But it also generates discussion, and people offline will contact me and say, I'm going through this exact same thing. I am a founder of this kind of company. Can I talk to you on the phone? And I always say
Hmm.
yes. I mean, um, so when I walk every day, I try to get 15,000 steps in. I do get 15,000 steps in a day. I will always say, yeah, I'm going to be walking from 2 until 3. Like,
Hmm.
give me a call. Here's my cell phone.
Okay.
So that's
Hmm.
it. I mean, it's like how what do you do to try to give back and kind of help the younger folks that are potentially in the same position?
So it's a form of contribution for you.
I think it's much more effective than other things that I've tried in the
Hmm.
philanthropic space. Like you
Hmm.
can write a check, which we do. You
Yeah.
can be on a board of a philanthropy, but I feel like I'm gifted at business and entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
and I think sharing that with folks who can found a business in their community, help their family, help their community, is a more enduring impact on the world than writing a check.
Yeah. Have you read this book, From Strength to Strength?
I have
It bas-
not, but it's been recommended to me by a
Yeah,
few
I, I,
friends now,
I
so
I
I
think
need to.
you would enjoy it. It's interesting that lots of entrepreneurs find it depressing. I actually find it empowering. I don't understand why they find it depressing. But the key idea, and what you just said reminded me of it, is that after we achieve success, and if we reach a certain age for entrepreneurs, I believe it's 38, chances are that we will not be able to put as much intensity and physical effort and energy into the business, but also our brain changes and it goes from one type of intelligence into a different type of intelligence. And later on, there's actually a chance to be even more successful in a very broad way in
Hmm.
the sense of impact and contribution. You can give it even more to the world later in life, but only if you jump what he calls a second wave, when you are not afraid to acquire the new skills and start doing things like teaching, like sharing your ideas, your
Hmm.
insights, why you became successful. So it actually is similar to what you seem to have found in your life. And I wonder if you are intentionally also thinking about it as your next path, if you plan to turn it into, a book, or build a personal brand about around it, or it's more just spontaneous kind of hobby like activity for you.
Yeah, I don't think I am writing uh, what's turned out to be kind of a large um, book on things that I want my kids to know. And
Hmm.
so I started writing it directly to my three kids. And then some relatives said, "Oh, well, would you share it with our kids?" And then
Hmm.
I've mentioned it to a couple friends and they're like, "Oh, I'd like to read it." And so I started to think maybe I should edit this and not be so direct in terms of the language to my kids. But I, I did feel like it's hard to tell your kids everything you want them to know. But if you write
Hmm.
them a letter, they can read it kind of on their own time. And so I've done that. I've written letters to my kids. And then I was like, you know what? I want to leave them with a little bit more. And so I've just started writing and writing. It's not something I intend to publish, but who knows? In terms
Why
of,
not?
well, I, like I said, I mean, it's just, I mean, maybe I should, but it's weird to have so much written down and then say, oh, maybe people outside of my family will read this. And I'm kind of like, did I write this with the right voice? Is it the right, you know what I mean? So
Okay. but but
maybe,
but don't you think you'll get a much more sense of contribution if you share it with the world the way you share your wonderful videos?
well, it is widely applicable. I mean, I, I think I'm fairly direct and opinionated with my kids and maybe too direct in terms of a wider audience, but you might be right. I mean, it definitely could turn out that way. And so I've started to write, kind of new content in this, in a way that's a little more, kind of general voice instead of, directly addressed to my kids. And we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll take it and preview it when I feel like it's 80% and see if it's something that other folks find valuable.
Well,
Um,
some books are written to kids. Uh, uh, I mean, not all kids, but the author's kids. And
mm,
that makes a fascinating format to read.
maybe
I'm
you're
not
right.
sure you have to change it. It makes it very personal. It's almost
it,
like,
it's it's very personal, right? I mean, I talk about kind of how Lila and I met. I mean, I go into a lot of detail about things like marriage because I think as I often tell people, that's the most important decision you'll make.
yeah.
It's so important, and so yeah, maybe you're right. In terms of other things like personal brand, I'm really just having fun.
Hmm.
I'm not probably organized enough
Hmm.
to go beyond kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I found that for some post-exit founders, the idea of building a personal brand creates a structure around sharing their insights, and actually, it is helpful. Um,
Some people do a great job. I mean, I'm really
yeah,
impressed with how some folks kind of put content together and they really share a lot of very very valuable
yeah, exactly.
wisdom.
I always encourage exited founders to do that. As you said, we have an obligation to share how we got where we are, and we have to do
Yep.
it honestly. And you mentioned marriage just now, and I thought if you feel that you have this duty to share how you became successful, it should apply to marriage as well. And
Yep.
it's definitely the fact that you are sharing deeply the secrets of a successful marriage. It's very, very valuable, and it may be more valuable than any business advice you ever give. I'm just trying to encourage you to
Yeah.
actually publish your book for other people. I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, is it just humility that is stopping you, and maybe you feel it? you shouldn't be doing it because you put yourself too much um, out there. But there is a reason
Well,
I'm interviewing you. You are
yeah, maybe
fascinating.
maybe when I reach a little bit further, I'll send you a draft and you can tell me if this is something
I'd
that
love
looks like
that.
it's publishable.
I'd
Okay,
love that. I'll give you an honest feedback, I promise.
great.
Um, Adam, thank you so much for all this wisdom. This has been absolutely amazing. I want to ask you just one last question before I let you go. It's the question I ask everyone at the end of the interview. How do you want to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as a good person. And that's what I tell my kids, that my job is to try to raise them as good people who are happy.
Mhm.
And for me, that's enough in this world, is to be remembered um, as a good person. And
Mhm.
that's it. It doesn't have to be, it's not for me any grander than that.
No, but it's such a beautiful answer. Very spiritual answer, really. It doesn't need to be complicated. Adam, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I think there's so much wisdom and value that you're offering others by sharing your story and your thoughts. Thank you so
Anastasia,
much.
thank you so much for having me. And thank you for doing what you do on this podcast. I think it's super valuable for our community.
Thank you so much.